Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I will show you how to make the ebb and flow chunky knit hat. This is a great hat for advanced beginners. You start off with a great cast-on method that allows you to have stockinette stitch without having it roll up on you. Then you combine garter stitch with stockinette to create this beautiful fabric. And then subtle shaping is used up here in the crown just to bring it all together and have a nice finishing at the top. This is a great hat that uses chunky yarn and you can make it in no time. Did I mention it is also knit flat? That's right, you can make this without having to use any circular needles or double pointed needles if you don't want to. You can just pull out your straight needles and get going. This is a free pattern available on marleybird.com. You can find a link to the pattern in that little I button right there or in the video description box right down there below. With the pattern, you'll find a full list of the materials and a direct link back to this video. While you're down there in the video description box, why don't you smash that like button, as my kids say. Go ahead, get your pattern, gather your materials. Let me show you how to make this really great ebb and flow hat. Before we get started, let me show you what I used to make this hat. For this hat, I used one ball of Red Heart Evermore yarn. This is a lightly spun roving type yarn in a super bulky weight. I'm going to show you how to make this with circular needles just so that I can show you how to have all the stitches on one long length, but you absolutely could use straight needles for the whole project. Along with your knitting needles, you will need a bent tip tapestry needle and a good pair of scissors. You have your materials and your pattern. Let's go ahead and jump in with this really great alternative tubular cast on. As I mentioned, this hat is started off with this really great cast on, which gives the illusion of having the knit stitches just start from nowhere. And this is done by doing a long tail cast on and then an alternative to the tubular cast on. This is a cast on I like to use when I'm using a bulky weight yarn because I think it gives a really nice finish, and it's very similar to the tubular cast on without being as fiddly with all the spare yarn and all that good stuff. To start off, you will need to get yourself a nice amount of yarn to accommodate the full circumference of the hat and for your long tail cast on. The tail should be about 3 times the circumference of the hat plus a little bit extra. That's where you're going to want to put your actual slip knot. To make a slip knot, put your working yarn or the tail of the yarn in the palm of your hand. Take your working yarn, wrap it around your forefinger and middle finger, and when you come back up, cross over. After you cross over, turn your hand, go underneath the front loop, grab the back loop and off, and you have a nice little slip knot. Place the slip knot directly onto your needles. Whether you're using straight needles or circulars, it really doesn't matter. We're not using these circulars as a circle, we're going to use them as if they're straight needles. Once you've placed that on, go ahead and work your long tail cast on. You want to cast on a total of 56 stitches for the adult size. Once you have 56 stitches on your needle, you will turn your work. And we want to work in stockinette stitch for a total of 3 more rows. So as we turn our work, we're already looking at purls, so we want to make sure we start off with a purl row. So you will simply go into your work, make sure your yarn is in front of your needles, yarn over, and pop out to purl. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. I am going to go ahead and switch my yarn into my other hand just because that is another way of knitting and it's the same motion. I'm just holding my yarn in the opposite hand. I got all this string everywhere. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In. I want to jump in here in between me working my stockinette stitch rows and just show you how I'm going to use these circulars as if they're straights. When I get to the end of my row here, you can see all my stitches are off this needle technically. They're just sitting here on this cord. What I'm going to do is the needle that has all my stitches on it, I'm going to place that into my left hand. I'll grab the empty needle, place it in my right hand. So this is just like as if they were straights and not actually connected there at the bottom. And I will start working once again. So I'm on my knit row and I'll jump in and just start purling. So that's how you would use your circulars as if they were straights. And the benefit of doing this is that it really allows you to let the stitches stretch out and they're not all scrunched up into one straight needle. Okay, now go ahead, finish your knitting. Once you've worked in stockinette stitch for the required 3 rows, it's time to do this really cool little trick that I like to do when I'm using bulky weight yarn. This particular method of what I'm going to show you is very similar to like a picot cast on, but we aren't doing the picot stitches. We're keeping everything in stockinette. I'm also going to let you know that I chose to only do those 3 rows of stockinette stitch instead of the suggested 5 because we're using the bulky weight yarn. If you wanted to use this technique maybe with a thinner weight yarn, you might try to do this with 5 stitches or 5 stockinette stitches stitch rows instead of just the 3. But with the bulky weight yarn, I liked the way the 3 looked. What we're going to do is we are going to take this cast on edge right here and we are going to fold it up. And what we will do is we are going to knit into the stitch that's on our needle and the corresponding stitch from our cast on. Now, if I hold up my cast on edge here, I want you to see something. Can you see you have these nice loops right here that are out here toward the outside? And then if you were to think of it as a V, you have a loop, the corresponding loop right here on the inside. Can you see that? It looks like a V right there, right there, right there, right there. What I want to do is I want to leave these outside loops alone. And I'm going to knit into this stitch on my needle and the inside loop, or if you were looking at it like this, it's the right leg. That's what I did for this hat. If you find that working the outside loop works better for you, you can absolutely do that. But this is how I did it on the hat that I showed you at the beginning. Okay, you ready? This is like magic. When we do this, it's going to give a really nice rolled edge. You are going to put your needle into the stitch that's on your left hand needle. Now take your right hand needle, working down here at the bottom, go in to that right loop. See what I mean? Just make sure you're going into the corresponding right loop. Now yarn over your right hand needle, pull that yarn over through that loop and the stitch on your needle, and then off. Go into the next stitch, the next loop, yarn over, come out that loop, out that stitch, and off. Very similar to a 3 needle bind off. Go in, and we want to make sure we get the next loop right there. Come through and off. And you will do this all the way down the row. As you're working along, you will start to notice that your work is starting to get this really nice turned edge to it, and it looks really good and clean. And on the inside, you can see where the loop we are not going into, that outside loop, is resting right there. And so it will look like it jumps right into the garter stitch, which we will work here next. As you get towards the end here, it might be a little tricky at the very end to see what stitch to go into because that is your slip stitch edge. You just want to make sure that you're into the edge. And what's really nice is with this yarn, it kind of gives a color difference. So you can kind of know that you're going into the same color. My needle fell out of that last stitch. I'm going to pull that in. Let's see here, and I'm going to pull that through. All right, so good. All right, so let's take a look at what we should have here. You should have a really nice curved edge here, and it just rolls over really so subtly, and you will have a little bit of a lip right here where that little edge there that we did not pick up kind of sticks out ever so slightly. But trust me, as you're wearing the hat, because I've been wearing this hat nonstop since I designed it. I love it. It feels so good. And this particular cast on is really nice and stretchy, and it gives a really nice comfortable feel to the hat. So this is totally worth taking the time to do this. Once you've done this cast on, the rest is easy peasy for the body of the hat. You're going to work in garter stitch, and then every so often do one row of purl to give yourself some stockinette stitch. What's really awesome is with this pattern, I've done a full spreadsheet, so that way you can mark off row for row what you need to do in order to finish this hat. So as you complete each row, it will tell you, like, knit this row, you can check it off. Knit this row, check it off. Then maybe it's purl a row, check it off. So you'll know exactly where you are. The reason I've done this is because I know sometimes we come home late at night from work, or we are rushing to get a project done, and sometimes we'll forget what row we're on, and I like to make it really easy for you to keep track. So you'll notice in your pattern, there is that spreadsheet right there for you to check off. So go ahead, continue on in this pattern. You're going to work in garter stitch first, and then you'll jump to some stockinette, back to garter, back to stockinette, so on and so forth through all the rows. If you remember, garter stitch is where you knit every single row when you're working flat, and stockinette is where you'll knit a row, purl a row, and knit a row, purl a row, so on and so forth to get the stockinette stitch. Once you have completed the body of the hat, join me back here. I'm going to show you how to work the crown stitches. Okay, welcome back. I have finished the body of my hat. Hopefully you have too. And it's time for shaping the top of the hat. Now, when we shape the top of the hat, that is called the crown shaping. And we will do that by working a series of decreases every other row until we get down to the number of stitches that we want for the very top of the hat. The decreases I chose for this particular hat pattern is a knit two together through the back leg. I felt it was really easy to work that particular stitch with this yarn, given that it is lightly spun roving. I found it easier to get into versus a knit two together. Having said that, if you just want to do a basic knit two together instead of a knit two together through the back leg, and you already know how to do that, you absolutely could do that. But let me show you how I did my decreases. We are going to decrease every fourth stitch, and we're going to start off by knitting one and then jump into our decreases. So I will go ahead, I will knit one stitch, and then I'm going to do my decrease. By knitting two together through the back leg, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the first one and then go into the second one, just like so, and knit them together through the back leg. Then I will go ahead and knit one stitch. So that's 4 stitches I've used up. Now let's do our repeat. So we knit one stitch, knit two together through the back leg, and knit one stitch. So that's our repeat. We will continue doing this all the way to the end of the row. Knit two together through the back leg, and knit one stitch. Let me show you with the yarn in my opposite hand. It's the same motion, just holding the yarn in the other hand. So I knit one stitch, and then I knit two together through the back leg. Knit one stitch, and that's my repeat. When you get to the end, you will finish with, oops, let me try that one more time. I split my yarn. I don't want to do that. There we go. Finish with your knit one, so it's the end of the repeat. And you'll notice that you are doing this part on the stockinette stitch section. So we just did that on the knit portion. So when we turn our work, it's time to purl back. Now you will do no shaping on the purl row. So it is simply purling all the way down this row. When we get to the end of this row, we will turn our work, and on the next row, we will work a series of decreases once again. At the end of the purl row, you'll turn your work and it's time to do another decrease row. This time, we're going to decrease every third stitch. So we're going to knit one and then knit two together through the back leg all the way down the row. So we will jump in, knit one, knit two together through the back leg. Knit one, knit two together through the back leg. Knit one, knit two together through the back leg, all the way down this row. You will finish with a knit two together through the back leg, which is totally fine. We are back to garter stitch, so we will turn our work and we are going to knit this entire row. No shaping is done on this particular row, but when we do the next one, we'll do one more decrease row. So this one, we simply knit all the way down. Now this next row, we do want to do another decrease, and we're going to do it in every stitch all the way down. So turn your work, and just like before, we're going to do knit two togethers in every single stitch. Knit two togethers through the back leg in every stitch all the way to the end. And when I say every stitch, I mean every 2 stitches. So we're not going to have just a plain knit stitch in between. By doing this, we are really decreasing down the number of stitches we have at the top of our hat. So this is really important that we do this section. It'll make it easier for us to pull the stitches closed at the top and have a really nice finish. At the end of the row, you will turn your work. We will knit back down this row and get to the next row. Go ahead and turn your work and we'll do a decrease one more time. So every 2 stitches we'll work the knit through the back loop, okay? The last set of decreases, we will get down to 7 stitches. Once you've got those 7 stitches complete, go ahead and turn your work. Work one more row of purls. And we're done. We're to the top of the hat. So what we want to do now, this is how much yarn you have left from your skein of yarn. We want to make sure we cut a length of yarn that will not only go through these stitches, but it's enough to seam our hat closed. So it's always nice to make sure you have enough that goes down the length of the hat and then just give yourself a little bit extra just to be absolutely sure. Go ahead and snip your yarn off, and this is where the bent tip tapestry needle comes in handy. You'll take your bent tip tapestry needle and you will thread your yarn into that needle. Now, we want to take this needle and work it through all of these stitches. So what you will do is you will go into each stitch as if to knit and then off, as if to knit and then off, as if to knit and then off, as if to knit and then off. And then give it a pull through, as if to knit and then off, knit and then off, knit and then off. Needles free, no more needle. I'm going to set that aside. Pull my yarn. Now, we want to seam this closed, okay? So we want to pull this yarn to pull this closed like a drawstring. But because this is unspun woven yarn or unspun roving, we want to be really careful when we pull because we could accidentally pull it apart. So what I like to do when I did my first hat is I came back over here to the first stitch I went into, and I just started threading my needle back through and kind of give it a pull like that. So now I'm pulling it, but I have the strength of the stitches around them as well. So I'm just going through all of that. You can see it's nice. It's a nice finish right there. I have my yarn coming out right here where the opening is, and now it's time to seam together my hat, and that's the last bit before you will have your hat complete. So let's jump into that part next. To seam the hat, what we want to do is we want to match up our garter stitch rows and our stockinette stitch rows. For the garter stitch rows, what we will do is go through that purl bump right there and seam together with the corresponding purl bump on the opposite side. When we get to the stockinette stitch portion, we will work mattress stitch along those stitches. So it's a combination of joining the garter stitch and mattress stitch together. Okay, so starting up here at the top, you want to make sure these come together. Remember, we have one little stockinette right here. So I'm going to start off by putting my needle right through my stockinette stitches right there and pulling that, and then coming over here to the corresponding side and going through my stockinette stitches over here. And I'm just threading right through the stitch. Now I'll come back over here to this side, and working through this purl bump, I'll pull my needle through that purl bump, come over here to this side to the corresponding purl bump, and pull my needle through there. Drop down, go to this purl bump and the corresponding purl bump. When I pull those together, it looks really seamless. It looks really good. Now it's time to work into the stockinette stitch section with the mattress stitch. For mattress stitch, you work along this row of stitches. You will go into one stitch and come out a stitch below, like 2 stitches below. So you have 2 of those ladders. Those are 2 purls from the opposite side. You will pull your needle through those and pull it really nice. Coming over here to the corresponding section here. So it's right here. Let's see, there's that one, here's this one. I want this one right here. So I'm going to go in, come out. There's 2. It's a little bit difficult right there because that's where I have my decrease, so it's kind of hard to see. And right here you can see my yarn is starting to come apart a little bit, so I want to be a little bit careful as I'm tugging on it. Now I'm past my stockinette portion, so I come back down here to where the garter stitch is, and I'm doing 1 for 1 on the garter stitch with the purls. And as long as everything just lines up nice and neat, and you're lining up your rows, your seam will not be too terribly visible, okay? It's going to be nice and pieced together. I'm to my stockinette stitch portion again, so I'm going to go in, come out. You can see there I have 2 bumps. Pull this down, come over here, go in, and come out. It's a little bit easier here now because I don't have a decrease there, right? To fight with. And now I'm back to my garter stitch. All right, so I'm down here to the bottom section of my hat, and this is where I have this very subtle stockinette, right? Because we have that nice curl. So I'm going through 2 stitches there along that row and giving it a pull, and I'll do the same over here. And the pull through will come right through the bottom here. See that? And when I pull it through, as long as my yarn holds, that'll pull together. And then right here, all I want to do is I will match these up and seam them together, going through this nice kind of channel. I've created there when I did the seam together. See how it just pulls those? So when I did this pull up and knit together, I created a nice kind of channel in there. So I'm just pulling my yarn through there to pull the two sections together. And now I will just simply weave in my tail on the inside. And because I have this nice seam here, I can use that for my tail to work into, so I don't have to disrupt any of the stitches in the body of the hat, which is really convenient. And I'm just going up the tail or up the seam here just a little bit, and then I'll work my way back down the seam just so that it's nice and secure. And then I'll snip this yarn right there. And because I didn't have any knots in my yarn, I didn't have to join a new color. I only have two ends to weave in. So I have my starting point end right here, and I simply just thread that onto my needle. If I see I need any more closure right here, I can use this end to kind of pull those together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull together right there. I just think that looks a little bit better, right? It pulled those two a little bit closer. And then I will just pop in, making sure that all my seam and everything is on the inside of the hat. It's not too thick. It looks really pleasant and nice. And let me weave in my tail here, and I'll pop this around so I can show you. I love this. I love it when I can make something so simple. So here is my seam. Here's the seam of my hat. You can see it came together really nice. Of course, there is a seam there. It's not, you know, completely invisible because I have a combination of different stitches, but I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks pretty good. And it's on the back of the hat. So when I rotate this over and set my hat down, if I wanted to add one of my nifty little tag things here, I just want to make sure, let's see, for this one, there's the center of the hat. I would want to make sure I add the tag right about there, and that makes it so that way the tag is about right here on your eye, like to the side of your eye. You don't want it right on your eyeball. So yeah, that's how that works. So here you go. Here is your finished hat. If you wanted to, you could take the remaining yarn you have and make a pom-pom. You could put that on the top if you want. I've made so many pom-pom hats lately that I decided I would just make a basic hat. And I'm not gonna lie, I love it. You want me to put this on? I always put on my hats after a hat video is complete. So let's see here. Let's see how we look here. Messes up my hair. Oh, how adorable is that? I think I always say that too, but it is. It's so cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta go get myself my little Marley bird tag and put it on there so that way people know I made it. And I can also tell people if they like it, they can come and watch this video right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel, just like all of you. Hopefully you will run out, grab yourself some Red Heart Evermore yarn. It's super easy to work with. It's a super bulky weight yarn. Fairly big needles, bent tip tapestry needle, very important, and this free pattern over at marleybird.com. Hopefully you like this hat. I like it. I think it's adorable, and I can't wait to see all of yours. Make sure you tag me in social media whenever you post something so that way I can see it, and smash that like button, guys. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye! I'm sure there are other videos here that you will enjoy. Go ahead and check out some of my knitting and crochet videos as well as some of my crafting videos. You will love them, I promise. If you hit subscribe, you'll be up to date whenever there's a new video released. And as my kids say, don't forget to smash that like button. Bye! Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.